So the prevailing practice in distance learning courses is to organize your courses according to modules. And it's a good idea to follow that practice because that way students who have previously had distance learning courses will not be confused, and you in designing your course will not become confused. So what we'll talk about in this particular segment is first off, uh, what a module structure means and various types of modules that you might have. We'll then talk about adding modules in Canvas, uh, and then adding content to modules. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about requirements and prerequisites, which are a way of controlling how your students go through the modules as they proceed through the course. And these also allow you to do a kind of a status check on where all your students are. Here at USF, the standard way we organize a course is by creating modules. And there are lots of different ways that you could, in fact, create modules. If you've got a course that has a very much of a weekly organization, as my case method courses do, I call the modules week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. If you've got specific topic areas, you might set up the modules by topic areas. But your students doing online courses are going to expect to be going through the modules in sequential order, unless you very clearly specify otherwise. And so what you want to do is you want to set up a series of modules that to the greatest extent possible sort of overlaps well with the syllabus or the textbook you're using or the time periods. There's no right way of doing it, but there are lots of ways that will confuse the students, and by default, those are the wrong way. So what I'm going to do now is create some modules that reflect the organization of this course. One of the standard thing we're seeing in nearly all courses is to have an initial module called Getting Started. So I'll click Create a Module. I'll call it Getting Started. And I'm not going to lock it. I'm not going to force students to move through the modules in sequential order. So I will just click on Add Module. And we have a module called Getting Started. Now, one of the things that I discovered when I was preparing this is that before the module becomes official, you have to publish it, which is this little gray cloud here. And I will just do this now. If you do not publish it, what will happen is this modules will stay grayed out and the students won't see it. Now that I've published a module with any luck, if I switch, now it's darkened, and we'll come back here. And now the students would be able to see modules on their menu, which is obviously very important. The next type module that I often create that's sort of outside the course organization is one where I put all the documents that the students might be referring to throughout the semester. I'll usually call that one something like permanent resources. So I will do that right now. And you'll notice I've got a new option here called Add Prerequisite. I can set up modules so that you cannot see or operate another module until a previous module has been created. Now, I don't need to do that right now. When I said a previous module had been created, I mean a previous module had been completed by the student. So we'll now click on Add Module here. And I don't need to publish this one, though I certainly could. I'll probably just publish them. Since the course itself is not published, it doesn't actually make it visible to anyone, but it does fill out my menus. Now I'm going to get to the actual organization. Now, this workshop is organized into 7 sections in the workshop manual, and so that provides a convenient module organization. So what I will do is now I will create another module. And what I'll do is I'll go right over to my syllabus and just use the names that I have on the syllabus. Once again, part 1 overview. There's a tab there, so I'll get rid of that. I'll add that. And once again, this will make it easier for students to follow. Create part 2. Create part 3. And one of the things you might notice, I certainly just did, was that I actually have these things in a different order than the final book. And so we'll get a chance to see how to reorder these things or change it once you've done this. Because I had course creation and content creation switched. So we'll just keep adding modules here. You'll notice that a lot of things are occurring sort of off the side of the screen. As I talk about in the Camtasia video, I usually only use a portion of the screen when I'm doing a screen recording. That way it will appear clearer on the playback, and it will also, it makes it easier for me to do things off the side that aren't being recorded. Of course, it does mean that I have to work with a slightly smaller screen. So here we go. Okay. And then we'll be done with the last of these modules. Okay, now as I mentioned, the modules are in the wrong order. I'll just publish all of them so I don't forget. So I mentioned we're in the wrong order because my course collection module was not, is module 4 now, whereas my content collection module, content creation module is now module 2. So after getting on and off the modules page again, essentially to save the changes, you'll notice I've got these little pull tabs here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag up content creation to the second slot. I will drag course creation to the 4th slot. Then I will come over here, do an edit, and change this to part 4. And I will do an edit over here, change this to part 2. And now I have a module design that pretty much mirrors the design of the course workbook and should make it somewhat easier to follow. Once you have your modules in place, the next thing that you're going to want to do is add content to them. And sometimes you'll have content prepared, other times you will actually create the content within the module itself, for example, a page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of prepared content, my syllabus, and I'm going to add it to the module. So what I will do here is I will add this to the Getting Started module, I guess. And this particular content will be a file, so I'll come over here to a file, and I will then click on New File, which will allow me to upload and link to it at the same time. If you've already uploaded the file to your content area, you just link to it. So I'll go to Recent Places. I should have a faculty workshop there. I'll do Date Modified. There we go. Faculty workshop. We must have a syllabus here. Yes. Okay. So I'll open it. And I will then add the item. And now I have the syllabus uploaded into my content area. Now, once I've uploaded into my content area, a new item appears. And just to illustrate this, let's first take a look at what I can do if I want to edit permanent resources. I can add a prerequisite, but I can't do anything internally. Over here, however, because I now have content in this module, I can get a new option, which is Add Requirement. And what adding requirement does is it helps define what it means for a student to complete a module. Now, if you had an assignment, that completion might involve actually getting through the assignment and getting a grade. In the case of a file, pretty much the only thing that we can require a student to do is look at it. So I'll illustrate that. I'll add a requirement, and it'll give me a list of everything that I can require. In this case, the list is only this one file, because that's all we've got in the module, and the users must view the item. Now, if I had other types of things, I might be able, if it was a page, contribute to it, submit an assignment, or reach a certain score. Those are all grayed out for files, because the only thing you can do with a file is review the item. So now I will update the item, and now what has happened is within this module, if a student has not looked at my syllabus, they will not be considered having completed the module. Now, how do we use this? Well, one of the ways we can use this is with the View Progress. And right now, I don't actually have any students loaded in here. So as a consequence, it's not going to be very interesting. But if I click View Progress, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me how many students have completed each module. And so if I put those requirements in the module, I have a way of gauging where my students are. And this is particularly useful in self-paced courses. And I used to have to do this kind of manually in Blackboard, but Canvas has made this much, much easier. And if you want a course that is really run in lockstep, then you can force the students to view or interact with every item before they can move on to the next module. That's the prerequisite capability. I tend to be a little looser in my organization, but I think that's mainly a matter of personal taste. And so those are the things you need to know about modules in order to get started as you design your courses.